right. Hope you like the interlude intro there, courtesy of the Doobie Brothers. This is Mr. Miller with Macroeconomics Unit 1 Practice Packet Help. You may be sitting at home this weekend, much like myself, pondering the music, the meaning of life, or simply pondering your AP Macroeconomics homework. So I thought it may help you out by offering you some pointers in this practice packet. Beginning with Chapter 4 in the 16th edition, which is what we use in class, or Chapter 2 if you're in the online text. The first question asks for you to list 4 benefits of private property rights. So several of those are available on page 60. Remember here, you're looking at the market system, and capitalism, as it's otherwise known as, depends on the ability for individuals, entrepreneurs, lay people like yourselves, to own property, coupled with the freedom to negotiate legal contracts, which are binding. Individuals can pursue their self-interest. They can obtain and use and dispose of property resources as they see fit. And as you all well know, some of the best facilities are the private facilities versus the publicly owned resources. So those are some of the benefits. Private property rights also encourage investment, innovation, the life of intellectual property is protected with property rights. It's one of the foundations of a free market system, or of a free people for that matter. And of course, private property rights also allow for individuals to engage in trade. Question 2 is an allusion to microeconomics, which may have you on your heels. This is actually an allusion to the Coase theorem. And so I don't know if you were awake for this last semester or not, but here is the answer to number 2. You can take a look at this again. This is the principle that individuals, when there is a dispute, if there is a small number of people involved, and if one or more of these persons has ownership of the property that's part of the dilemma or the problem. In the textbook previously talked about the country club owner and the logging company that wanted to cut down that forest of trees. Well, the country club owner on that mountain lake wanted to keep the forest intact. The Coase theorem suggests that no government or middleman or third party need get involved to resolve the dispute if one of the parties owns property. So I realized that was a really tricky question, not in the textbook. So there's your tip for that one. All right, so moving on, along with the freedom of enterprise and choice, which is an important section in your text, also wanted you all to look at derived demand and consumer sovereignty. Just the idea that consumers more or less guide the entrepreneurs and business owners to produce the things that they are most interested in. And so there's this element that sometimes you hear in business, or this saying that sometimes you hear in business, like the customer is always right. And that boils down or comes back to this basic market system notion that entrepreneurs want to please the individual consumer. Right, moving a little more quickly now, number 4, elements within the market system sending signals to buyers and sellers. The prices are signals, people. That's what we're referring to here, prices that are the signals in the market system. Law of demand, law of supply, prices are high, lower quantities demanded, but greater quantities supplied. You know the drill. Number 5, what are 3 benefits from division of labor and specialization? Check those out on page 63. Division of labor involves human specialization. So you can think of the fast food restaurant in which there are people back there making the burgers, adding the condiments and the sides, and then the people that get everything bagged up and handed off to the customer while receiving their money. So just some examples of division of labor, but you want to take a look at page 63 for more on that. The four fundamental questions that each economy must resolve. Back in Microeconomics Unit 1, we discussed three important questions: what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. And now in macro, we're also going to assess how the system may accommodate change, because we are focusing on the market system, and we want to think about how the institutions within that economy as a whole help to facilitate innovation and production and change. So question 7 is looking at derived demand, and you may recall from fall semester that there's a special relationship between the factor market and the product market. And specifically, demand for resources is derived from the demand for goods and services that resources help to produce. So there's a demand for, your book talks about auto workers because there's demand for automobiles. Real simple example. And this is all interrelated back to the consumer sovereignty and dollar votes concept, that consumers vote with their dollars, registering what products they have a special. All right, question 8 is asking us to complete 5 examples using the production possibilities curve, and you need to know the 3 shifters of that curve in order to complete this successfully. The 3 shifters, of course, involve elements that would increase productivity. So the number of workers in the workforce, in the total workforce. Also technology, trade, and those things that we discussed in the notes. All right, so example 1, Congress is spending money and there appears to be more students attending college and graduation. Well, so you have a better educated workforce, and we assume that there is a correlation between educational level and productivity. So that shifts the curve to the right in example A. Example B, we have a healthier lifestyle, healthier workforce, so we're shifting right again. In the third example, we see the U.S. as part of a trade agreement, so here we have trade as the shifter, and we assume that is for both capital goods and consumer goods. The question doesn't specify, so we'll just assume that it's both. The fourth example, unemployment increases from 4.2% to 5.1% of the labor force. All right, so this is tricky when we see unemployment questions about the PPC. Remember, any point inside the production possibilities curve is a point of inefficiency or characteristic of abnormal unemployment, or what we would say is unnatural unemployment. So in this case, what we have is likely a change from close to being at full potential to one of these points inside the curve. So although you may think, well, the curve would shift inward, well, technically no, we still have the same number of workers available, but they're currently not. So our potential hasn't changed, but our productivity or output is less than full potential. In the fifth example, we see computer viruses raging out of control, and efficiency and output in the economy decrease. So this is your example of the inward shift of the production possibilities curve. Page 2 of the practice packet is from Chapter 5, in the textbook we use in class, Chapter 4 if you're online. And the first question is about, so in macroeconomics there is an expenditures approach to counting up or summarizing economic growth, and the expenditures approach, that's where we use the GDP formula. But there's also what's called an income approach, and so question 1 is dealing with some of the components of the income approach, which of course GDP plus the income approach, those two things, they should come up with the same solution, the same number in terms of measuring economic output, because a person's or all income counted should be the same as all expenditures. Theoretically, right, circular flow. There are some shortcomings with that theory in that a lot of money isn't spent. It's saved, and some goes into financial markets or is involved in foreign markets. So regardless, in the U.S., in terms of putting together this functional distribution from greatest to least, the greatest percentage of income comes from wages and salaries, followed by what's called proprietors' income, and those are just business owners and their income, and then corporate income or profits, followed by interest earned, and finally rents that may be paid. So those are the four sources of income, what's called functional distribution. And two types of distribution of income mentioned in the text. One is functional and the other is personal distribution. And personal distribution is what we discussed when we learned about the Lorenz curve. You may recall that curve is the curve that has we call this the trend line, and we see generally this curve that's coming off of this trend line or line of perfectly distributed income. And then remember we have those quintiles, the 20th percentiles of the population. How much does the or the bottom 20% of the population earn? The next 40% in terms of total people and population. And then this, of course, is income or total amount, percentage of income that's held. So that, again, is just a reference to the Lorenz curve, which is personal distribution of income. All right, the next question, question 2, you're looking at taxes, personal consumption, and saving. And the question asks you to list, again, from greatest to least, the personal consumption expenditures for American households. And we are a very consumer-based economy, so personal consumption is the greatest form, followed by taxes and then saving in that second question. We're going to jump down and talk about legal forms of businesses. This is one thing I used to spend a lot of time on in class, and with AP, you just don't quite have as much time to do that. So the primary types of business structures in the U.S. are what are called proprietorships, partnerships, and then corporations. There are many more proprietorships, or what are sometimes called sole proprietorships, meaning that there may just be one owner or one primary person responsible for running the company. And they're the most numerous, but they're not the most profitable. Corporations are definitely the largest in terms of total sales and output. Partnerships generally are more unpopular or not as popular as proprietorships because of the complications legally and interrelationally that come about with dealing with a business partner. And there are all different varieties of partnerships, limited partnerships, in which there may be a financier and then a manager, or you may have a joint partnership, a joint venture, something you may have heard of in terms of an example of a partnership in which both persons are pretty actively involved in running the company. Biggest advantage of a corporation is that it involves what's called limited liability, which means the stockholders, who are the owners, only have at stake the amount of their investment, and of course the amount of their stock as that stock value goes up. So if the corporation goes bankrupt, the only thing the investors lose is their initial investment. That is limited liability. Unlimited liability is a characteristic of sole proprietorship, in that you're the owner. So if things go bad and your business goes bankrupt, then you have all the responsibility. And there are ways to protect against that. LLCs are a common example. You limit the liability by incorporating your small business.